Just as a reminder, we do record this meeting. It is open to the public, and the recordings as well as meeting summaries are posted to the task force website. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so we can get underway. All right, so welcome to each of you to the March 2023 Task Force on Homelessness and Racial Disparities full task force meeting. We're going to dive right into tonight's agenda, or this evening's agenda, rather. We're going to go through a welcome and roll call. We'll quickly cover our group agreements, and then we'll dive right into the draft report review, have some discussions, and then talk about submission next steps. I am going to go ahead and go through the formal roll call. Before we do that, are there any members of the public that would like to be acknowledged? Feel free to come off mute or drop your information into the chat so we can welcome you. All right, I'm going to go through the list here, and I will note you'll see that 2 of our pending task force members have been confirmed. Their appointments have been confirmed, so I've removed pending from each of their names. Ariel Nelson. Jessica Pratt.
Present.
Jimmy Jones. Paula Hall. Jennifer Parrish Taylor.
Present.
Katrina Holland. Marisa Espinoza.
Present.
Vanessa Timmons. Maria Vargas.
Present.
Dolores Martinez. Okay. Nicole Whitman.
Present.
Alan Evans.
Present.
Jill Smith.
Present.
Do we have Senator Gemma with us tonight? How about Senator Anderson? Okay. Senator Campos. All right. Nitan and Mike, if we notice any additional task force members pop in, can you just get my attention? Can't see everybody in the virtual room while I'm in presenter mode. All right, so just a quick rundown of our group agreements. Give grace and forgiveness, take good care, manage your boundaries during these meetings, be thoughtful and compassionate, take space and make space, openly share and support your colleagues as they openly share their experiences, engage in lively conversation, even if it feels awkward. In our WAIT acronym, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Does it need to be said by me right now? With that, I am actually going to pull down the slides because we're going to dive right into the draft report and have some feedback and discussion. For the purpose of our conversation, I just want to remind folks that everyone should have received a copy of the report about 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks prior to this meeting. I have received some feedback. No worries if you haven't been able to get to your feedback, but still have some light edits or wordsmithing. I did receive edits from Jessica to date, but just want to get a sense from task force members about how you're feeling about the report. We've already voted on and passed the recommendations. The discovery team and facilitation team will be adding some data points that reflect the 2022 point in time count data, along with an update and refresh of the disparities that are pretty much similar to the 2022 report that was submitted last January. So I think I will just open it up to hear from each of you as task force members.
Do you want like minor edits in this portion? Okay. So when I was
Or-
reading,
Or if it's easier, you can just minor edit.
I literally just have two things where I was like, oh, I think something's missing. So like under like area 1 solutions, it says like a set aside of locally flexible funding for historically underfunded institutions that represent, and there's nothing attached to
Jessica
that.
flagged that.
Yeah. And then just for Senator Casey, it should be Casey Jama. It's his full name, and it just has Senator Casey there.
Thank you for that. That's pretty important.
That's all I had.
The one thought I had, Mary Frances, this is Jessica, that I didn't say in my email was throughout the sort of explanatory or data part of the report, anytime that you can link possibly unfamiliar ideas for people to some background on it, for example, the targeted universalism, I think it'd be great if we could make that a hyperlink to an explanation, a high-level explanation of what that is and why it's so cool. Because I think there are probably lots of people out there who aren't super familiar with it.
I love that. That's a great suggestion and will do. But I won't get too link happy because there's a lot of stuff that could be linked in there.
Understood. Just to make it as universally appealing as possible is the eye with which I read that.
Alan, how you feeling about it? Marisa, Nicole, Jill, and Maria.
I think, I mean, outside of the couple edits that they were talking about, I think it's looks good. My team, myself and my team read through it, I don't know, a few days ago. And at the end of last week, and there were just a couple minor edits for the most part.
I think it looks great as a body.
It's going to have bells and whistles. The bells and whistles are coming. I know last year y'all saw that transformation for task force members that were around there then.
So for me, I'll admit I haven't had a chance to do more than just an initial review, but I will get to that soon. For now, I just had a couple things that I was noticing in the recommendations in the area 1 actually. And one of them I know we actually discussed last time, which I super appreciate. There was that discussion about who would be kind of like what would be the threshold for a person with a disability who would be eligible for the state-funded housing choice grant program. And I had talked about how it would be, really helpful to have there be a verification that someone could obtain through a provider rather than, using the Social Security definition or I think I'm trying to recall what we had there before. So this is making it more expansive and inclusive. I wasn't sure though about the term certified, and I actually think I used that language, certified provider, but it's like, I feel like that could actually make it a little more complicated. So I don't know if there's some other way to kind of phrase that, and I would certainly be open to other people's suggestions, but I just wanted to note it. Because it'd be like certified for what thing? I don't know if it should just be like a social services provider or something like that, or provider that is on a list that would be defined. I don't know.
Quick question for you, Marisa. Is it possible that those changes were happening towards the end of the last meeting? Is it possible that we got certified by, like, that maybe I interpreted that incorrectly?
I actually don't think you did. I'm pretty sure I said certified provider because I did think about it a little bit later and I was like, oh, yeah, certified, like there could even be qualified provider. I feel like that's a little bit more broad, qualified, but certified, I'm worried would be too limiting or just like vague because then the question would be who. I mean, I'm actually thinking about like how a lot of folks might have followed how DMV now, because of a bill that was passed recently, can do free IDs for people who are experiencing homelessness. But only certain providers can actually provide the eligibility for someone to be certified, or there's the certified providers that can provide the eligibility for someone to get that free ID. And it's created some complications, I think, for navigating that. I'm sure there were reasons why it had to be limited to certain providers, but I just wouldn't want to see that happen here since, like, for example, with different types of HUD housing, it's really just a form and there's an attestation that the person signing it is a provider of social services, has a certain type of service provider relationship, and a list of potential qualifications that would fall under that for that individual who's affiliated with an agency, if that makes sense. And I could even send over examples if that's helpful. Okay. Yeah, so there was that. And then the second thing was, and I don't remember how much we went into this last time, but this was just a question about the Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund. I would love for someone else to educate me on this if I don't know this correctly, but I feel like there was like more than one risk mitigation fund at the state level, and I know that at least one of them is linked to the Rent Well program. So maybe it's like the second one that is not. So I didn't know if there was like specificity there that would need to be clarified just to make sure there was like or did people have in mind like which program was going to be funded?
Jill, do you want to weigh in on that? I think you know quite a bit about the existing landlord risk mitigation fund.
Sure, I'm trying to remember the exact language that is in the report, but there are two. You're right, Marissa. There's one linked to Rentwell, and then there's a totally separate one that's linked to the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And they are different and have different requirements and parameters. So I think you're right. We probably should make sure we call out the right one that we're intending to expand. Let's see. So the one that's linked to the voucher program right now does already provide the $5,000. So adding the 1,000 and up to 14 days of rent loss would be new. So I'm assuming that we're wanting to expand the landlord guarantee fund that's currently accessible just to voucher holders to serve additional folks. And this is something we're already working on to expand due to the EO. So it really aligns with that effort. Mike is typing something.
Mike, you want to come off mute?
Oh yeah, Jill, you're right on. This is the Housing Choice Landlord Guarantee Program that I think we would want to maybe call out. I think if that's the intention of the task force, I think that's probably the right move. Essentially, like the things that we would be changing is it's pretty narrow right now. The way it's written, it's only for Housing Choice recipients. But like if there was a local rental assistance program that or one of the programs that the task force is recommending being created, it wouldn't be eligible. And that's exactly what Jill is recommending or was explaining around the emergency order work that we're doing. So definitely fits really well with some of the things that we're seeing about that program. So I think it would be a great thing to recommend in the report is expanding and really making sure that there's a good link to other programs besides Housing Choice. That's one really critical program. There's others.
Yeah, actually expanding it to serve, all rent assistance programs targeted at, previously homeless folks, I think would really be good language. Is that too narrow though? I mean, it might be. We could work on the technicalities later, just an expansion to include other rent assistance programs. Plus the $1,000 and 14 days rent loss. That would definitely be a great thing to add on to that program.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I'm hearing correctly. So this would be going to the fund that is targeted to people with vouchers, not the rent well, the one linked to rent well. Was there a discussion around the rent well, the possibility of putting some resource into Rentwell or including that, or basically because Rentwell does cast a much wider net, obviously, and it is pretty high subscription rate from my understanding, especially folks who are exiting homelessness. But I'm sure there are logistical and other feasibility reasons why one would not choose to fund that right now.
They're both really successful, great programs. And they both could use additional funding, support, and expansion. So, and they both kind of are used differently by different providers. So I'm either way or both ways would be helpful to people who really need this assurance. So whatever way the task force wants to go, we were just discussing the need for Rentwell to have like certain funding year over year, because right now that is not the case.
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, I was just gonna say I love the both and suggestion. That's all. And thank you, Jill.
Can I just ask for a clarification? I don't, that's a great question, Jennifer. I don't know if it would require a vote. We're not changing the spirit or intent. We're just adding clarity around both of them. Can we confirm the two names? Right now I'm saying the Housing Choice Landlord Guarantee and then the Rent Guarantee Program, but I'm hearing Rent Well, and I want to make sure that I capture it accurately.
Yeah, sorry. The two programs are Housing Choice Landlord Guarantee Program and the Rent Guarantee Program. Rentwell is the curriculum that we have deployed through a contract with Transition Projects, and they've translated that curriculum into dozen languages or so and provided out throughout the state. The curriculum isn't the same thing as the program. So like we could change the curriculum, but the Rent Guarantee Program would still exist, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, super helpful. Thank you for clarifying. What else is coming in? Are we ready to talk about next steps? And
I had a
propose?
question though. I feel like we do have an opportunity to, and we kind of lightly talk about it around revenue. I think we need to have potentially some stronger language in terms of like, look, y'all, we're not going to make systemic change if we don't have systemic investments and investments that match the urgency and the intensity of the crisis. Like, yes, it's great that they're moving money right now in the legislature, but the pie is still incredibly small. And our kicker is incredibly big year after year. So something's got changed. And I think we just need to start that drumbeat. I know that I've had that conversation with other community orgs in terms of like, how can we get on the same page? around talking about this, but like we need to start talking about it and not be quiet. And I just think, especially when it comes to communities of color and them being centered, folks don't want to have that conversation. The personal kicker. So it's like $1 billion or something crazy. And it's folks are just getting a check. And like, yeah, I love a kicker too, but like we got real problems to solve.
I actually think that for the financial projections by the state for the 2024 kicker, it's something like 3.1 billion, maybe.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't even include the corporate kicker, which is already earmarked for K through 12. But the funding ask that you all are submitting for is, a third of that. Maybe there's opportunity for a happy medium because there's still, roughly 2.1 billion left, if there were appetite to invest in the package that you all have submitted through the recommendations. That is a non-recommendation piece. Jennifer, would you like to and be able to propose some language to weave in? Or are we not there
I
yet?
would like to. I just don't have my capacity to. But let me just noodle on it and get back to you.
Can I ask a quick question about that? So yeah, if that's something that we end up at least including in this report, or in the recommendations or somewhere in there, and I'm imagining like the path to that involves a certain amount of time and legislative action or something like that. Is there an opportunity here to maybe just like offer kind of like a framework or some guiding principles for how, I'm trying to think of the words here, like such a reform to the kicker would prioritize communities of color and be equitable, et cetera. Because I guess to me it sounds like that is something that comes up in other policy discussions, and I'm just wondering, like, is there a way to kind of tie that back to this topic? And because I do think it's relevant, but doing so in a way that kind of lays the groundwork for some of that longer path kind of strategy.
I don't even think it has to be as specific as talking about the kicker. I'm just wondering if there is data out there in terms of other states that have done transformative change and how much it costs them. Like, hey, we're looking to do this, realistically, it's going to cost X. So if you're committed to that, then that's the money that we need. If you're not, then just say that.
So some
Right.
examples that come to mind are California and Seattle. California is looking at an $8 billion investment package, and I'm not sure where that has landed yet. And I know that there's maybe a $13 billion ask in the atmosphere, coming out of Seattle. I don't necessarily like that's comparable to another local government budget. So I don't know if they'll get that, but they're definitely, if they've got the ask in the atmosphere.
Yeah, and like Oregon legislators hate being compared to both California and Washington and want to outdo them. So if we have that data, great.
Okay, we do have that. I do not think we have a forum yet. I think we've had, let's see, we've got Jessica, Jennifer, Marisa, Maria, Nicole, Allen, Jill, Katrina, and Paula. So that will be 9. Just doing a quick scan of the list. I think we're right at 9. So we're 1 short of quorum. Any other thoughts around feedback and discussion? Captured the revenue piece. We've captured some light edits. Thank you for those. Reframing of language. I'm gonna go ahead and share screen again. So that we can talk through this. So for background context, during last year's sort of whirlwind submission, the ICF team did the submissions. So I'm assuming that we would continue on with that path forward and not have the task force submit on the behalf of each of you, or having the chair submit. But in terms of a general timeline, any final edits we would like to incorporate by this Friday, so that we can convert that into a final report. And this second and final draft report ideally would be shared with each of you by the 21st, for an on-time or ahead of time submission to the Legislative Assembly. And a copy going to the Housing Stability Council with each of you in the CC line by next Friday. So a little bit less than a week and a half.
I just want to make sure this isn't going to affect any of the language for bills that are to be submitted by Friday, right?
I am going to ask Leanne to come on the line and weigh in on that. I'm not sure
Okay.
if
Yeah,
you are
hi,
able,
folks.
Leanne.
I am. I am in transit from the Capitol, but I'm hands-free in the car. A little bit of background for folks. The agency introduced a placeholder bill to be able to incorporate any of the needed statutory changes that OHCS would have to implement to start to kind of comply and conform with task force recommendations. Obviously, there are things that OHCS can't pursue, either funding asks or things that are outside of kind of our scope, but we do have a bill that we'll be able to implement. Because of some timelines in the legislature, by Friday, all bills have to have a work session or a vote in committee scheduled, and then that vote has to take place by April 4th. So OHCS's placeholder bill, where we're likely to be incorporating some language directing the agency to do further planning around task force to kind of respond to task force recommendations, has been scheduled for the 22nd of March. And that's likely what we will have in our bill. And then anything funding related that OHCS is not able to request, because we are only able to engage with investments proposed by the governor. Senator Jama has introduced a secondary bill that can be run not by the agency to incorporate any funding elements beyond that. Happy to take questions on that. I know it's like some kind of funky legislative stuff.
Any follow-up questions for Leanne?
So you may have already said this, Leanne, but the answer is no, it wouldn't affect that, turning that in, right?
That's
By
right.
Friday? Okay.
I think it could be helpful, like if folks are comfortable with, us referencing the report and it's like referencing the recommendations that are coming forward, knowing that they'll be coming out in the next couple of days, I think that'll be fine. We've been working to forecast the general concepts that you all have been floating with legislators for a while, but no, I don't think that there's any like formal issues with the timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Good, Katrina. Do any other members?
All good, thank you.
Thank you. Do any other members have questions for Leanne directly? Okay. how do we feel about that timeline? We technically have until the 31st of the month. But based on conversations in the last task force meeting, I did sense some level of urgency to submit, to not wait until the 31st because that's the due date.
Right. I mean, I feel like the content is like 98% there. We just got to put on the bells and whistles. So I feel pretty good about what's there.
And I know Ariel is not here with us this evening, but one thing that she did say coming out of last month's meeting was around just unifying around messaging for the report across task force members. Did y'all want to discuss that now? Is it too soon to discuss that? Also, Ariel's not with us, so she might be able to drive her own points home more effectively.
Can you repeat what you said just now? I missed part of that.
So at the last meeting, Ariel Nelson mentioned the idea that the task force should get together to discuss messaging of the report after or either before or after submission. So I was wondering if there was any appetite to discuss that this evening or if you wanted to wait for future meetings.
I think just the top of my head, I think it might make sense knowing the governor's budget, kind of seeing what the legislature is doing related to this issue and where the gaps are, and being able to speak to that, what we're putting forth. And again, I think the need to really discuss revenue in the states could be interesting, but happy to hear what folks have to say. Right? I'm like, we're still like we're still live, right? Everyone's like so still. Like, did my computer glitch? Like, what's going on? So I think the answer is let's not discuss it now. Let's come back to it at another meeting. I think folks are a little fried.
I think so. Legislative session, executive order. Y'all are working day and night in Oregon. All right.
Busy out here.
We have Paula. Hey.
Hey there. I'm sorry that I'm late, so I'm not sure of the conversation up to this point. But if there is a concern about the messaging, having that ahead of time, so that I can just have some thoughts over, what are the concerns, or is it in a certain area, or what? I'd like to know what is the concern, so I know how to, one, be prepared, or two, put myself into a check and be very
so much,
honest and forward.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to be.
No. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I read it so much as a concern, but I think it was like, should we do something? Like, should there be some kind of comms related to what we're doing in this report?
Okay.
But to your point, we should actually have something written down that we could all review and agree upon, etc.
Okay.
Just to add a comment / question, we don't have to really discuss it today, but are there kind of any lessons learned from the last legislative report? And, I mean, obviously the context was different, but I'm just wondering if that could be incorporated. Because it kind of seemed like as soon as we, had kind of that deliverable all finished up, we did have a break. There was some time where we were not meeting. So I think just as far as that process and what that looked like, I would love to learn more insights from that.
Noted, and definitely anticipating a break. Definitely anticipating another survey to see how this second iteration of the task force went. The survey from last year definitely informed changes to the overall process and resulted in some pivots. So absolutely, we want to continue to strive for that continuous quality improvement. Thank you for uplifting that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, just to clarify, I think I was more, I agree for process for sure. That's great. And I do think you all did a really great job in incorporating feedback. I think I was referring more to like the comms area. So the reception of that original report and like, how did that go? Are there lessons learned there that, if we're having this conversation about this next one?
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, Mike and then Leanne.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, this Leanne may have more to add here around the comms piece, but I'm going to maybe divert a little bit here. One question, I guess I'm curious. I don't know if has been like nailed down is, will the task force continue to meet while we are implementing and planning the investments? Theoretically, if the legislature approves to proceed with some of these changes, I wanted to check whether or not is this task force willing to continue to meet, or is that part of the plan? Because I know in the original January 2022 report, the task force, I think, was planning to continue to meet. Y'all voted to continue to meet until 2025. So I wanted to gut check that because I think it'll inform the role of the task force is probably going to shift, right, into sort of a maybe an advisory oversight capacity in some sense as the agency is implementing the changes. So I wanted to just check if that's everyone's understanding, and also make sure that we're sort of just having a conversation about that. I apologize, that's a totally different direction though than the conversation.
I would hope we would continue to meet, to be honest with you.
Same, I think as changes continue to unfold over the next couple years, it would be great to have a space and a forum to continue those discussions and be ready to respond, offer support, offer advice and input.
Yeah, I agree.
Leanne?
Is if I can ask real quick, is this something that we should vote on to give it a little bit of merit, or is it just like an agreement we're kind of hoping to?
It's in the
statute, right?
It's in the statute, right?
To 2025. That's to what Mike was saying, that like we said we were going to do this. Do we
Okay.
still want to do this? Yeah.
All right.
That's what I signed up for.
I don't think it's in, I could be wrong, but it does House Bill 4051 talk about what happens after the task force delivers the March report, Mary Frances?
Yes, it does. So House Bill 4051 creates the opportunity for the task force not only to continue to meet through 2025, but also to submit additional reports to the Legislative Assembly and Housing Stability Council, if you all are so inclined. So it doesn't have to stop here. Leanne, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Mary Frances. Going back to kind of the earlier question around comms, wanted to kind of articulate to folks that I think even for the next coming months, there may be some opportunity for folks who are interested to engage as we start to think about still being in the legislative session, right? There's going to be OHCS's bill, placeholder bill, where there may be opportunities. So it would be interesting for me personally to know who would be interested in engaging in that. If you would be interested in testifying or supporting that work. Likely again, there'll be a secondary bill that could implement some of the funding shifts. So if you would want to be engaged in that work, to be a messenger of the task force and the deliberation that has happened in that space, that would be kind of another key place where folks could be involved in kind of communicating the intent of the task force and pushing that forward. So just kind of want to call that out, that one, this meeting space could be a useful opportunity to continue those conversations as we carry out the legislative session through the end of June. And two, again, just that like there will be pieces moving if you would like to be engaged in those. I think that there's plenty of opportunity for that, and I'm happy to talk with folks, or the task force can have those conversations about how you'd like to engage, but I think that there's a lot of space and opportunity to do that.
Thanks so much for that context, Leanne. Are there any other matters, naming that we do have a full quorum now, that any of you would like to discuss before we close out for the evening? Not seeing any.
I mean, I would just say thank you to the team that put so much work into coalescing our thoughts into something digestible and reflective of what we are intending these changes will do. So yeah, I know that that's a lot of labor to do that work.
No problem. And in that vein, I do need to share with you all that I am going to be leaving my role at ICF and actually joining the National Alliance to End Homelessness to head up their training and technical assistance. So that transition is, thank you, happening towards the end of this month. So just in time to have everything submitted. It's just been such an honor and privilege to work alongside you. Where we are today is not where we were in November of 2021, and I'm going to keep a close eye on what this body does and what the state of Oregon does over the next couple of years, because I think it's going to be pretty magical. Well, fun times. Happy Wednesday. We've got our timeline, so you all can expect a series of emails, and we've got an on target, on time, or ahead of time submission slated for next Friday. So with that, thank you to each of you and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Congrats again, Mary.
Congrats. Thank you.